I have to tell you that yesterday I received a yellow card because I tweeted that Alistair McKenzie wasn't available. So today I have to be very careful and very polite with my guests. So please accept if I'm not joking like usually, but I'm on the edge tonight. So, hello, Mr. Alistair McKenzie. How are you?
I'm okay. Yeah, you're on your last warning here, Vittorio.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, Alistair, it wasn't the best Saturday for a Lazio fan. Unfortunately for you, we're going to talk about the referee. I think we really have to today for what happened yesterday. But I want to start saying that probably the first 35 minutes of yesterday match were probably the best 35 minutes of Lazio this season, playing really, really well, even though, we're going to talk about, I didn't think Correa was playing that well, but Lazio was perfect in the first 35 minutes.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I couldn't see a game live yesterday, so I've not got. I'm not going to be able to really comment too much on things like that. But I think that one thing that's definitely struck me in the last, it's been 3 games in a row now, has been that the formation change, although being a relatively minor one, has apparently kind of brought a bit more. It's kind of re-energized the team and brought better performance out of them as a whole. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that about Correa, because I think perhaps, when Inzaghi decided to play Correa and Alberto on the same team, he would have thought that it might be a big opportunity for him to take advantage of. But actually, it seems more that Alberto's the one who's benefited from it rather than Correa so far. I think he still deserves to be in that team, but yeah, he seems yet to kind of make a huge impact, I'd say, since the formation change.
Yeah, I had the impression that yesterday he wasn't 100% fit. He was often reaching to his left leg, if I'm not wrong, looking like he had something that was bothering him. And same thing when he came out in the second half. First thing he did is check that there. I don't know if he had something, but he's a little bit like Felipe Anderson. He turns on and off in the same match very often. He did something really good, but I thought he should be more in the center of Lazio attacking, while often he was moving around and not getting the ball that much. Talking about Luis Alberto, I think it's not just the change of scheme of Lazio. I think he's back to his form. He's in confidence and he's really playing really, really well, and you can see it. And as we said often in this podcast, if Luis Alberto and Milinkovic-Savic starts playing at the level again, then Lazio can be a very dangerous team, and this is what's happening.
Yeah, and that was one of probably the most important thing or promising thing to come out of the game yesterday was the goal from Milinkovic-Savic, because how many times this season have we seen him try to line up one of those shots and get it completely wrong and just smash it over the crossbar? And yeah, that was a serious reminder to his critics of what he can do, what kind of skill he's capable of. And yeah, that's 2 goals in 3 games for him now. And we've said before, I think quite regularly, that it's unfair to judge a guy like him based on how many goals he scores. But there's no doubt that getting in the headlines for scoring nice goals again is definitely going to help with his confidence. And yeah, I agree with you on Alberto as well. He's definitely a confidence player, and when he has that back, he becomes a much better player. But yeah, he does also just he seems like a weight's been lifted off him. And yeah, it's probably a combination of all those things, of getting his fitness back to a better level, possibly the injury problem he's had easing off a bit, and getting his confidence back and benefiting a bit more from the formation change, where by having the likes of Milinkovic and Correa and Immobile around him, he's finding more space on the pitch. So yeah, I think that's been really, really positive thing. Obviously, we would have liked 3 points yesterday, but yeah, I think it's been quite a nice way to end the year, all in all. If we can try not to lose our minds about the refereeing too much.
Yeah, even though with Milan and Roma winning, Lazio still fourth, but the gap is not there anymore. So, and the next two matches for Lazio are Napoli and Juventus. So it is gonna be hard to still be in that position at the end of January after what happened today and yesterday. Sorry, and again, as I said at the beginning, I thought Lazio played really, really well, especially in the first 35 minutes. So it's a shame that they didn't win. But I don't know, Alistair, but I was a little bit surprised to see this tactic with Milinkovic-Savic and Parolo playing central midfield. We know that Torino, as every Mazzarri team, is a team that like to defend with all the men and then as fast as possible counter-attack. And having two players that are offensive players, even though Parolo can play in that position, was for me a little bit of a risk. Of course, Leva played the 26. He's just back from an injury, so I can imagine that Inzaghi didn't want to risk him. But I thought it was a risk solution from Inzaghi there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a very attack-minded team, and I suppose you need to... It shows again the importance that Lucas has to this team, and by the sounds of things, his introduction into the game helped that team kind of rediscover its shape and find the equaliser as well eventually. So yeah, I mean, he's been massively missed, I think, Lucas. It's pretty obvious when you actually go through the statistics of what the results have been like with and without him this season, but even just to provide, the balance, the link between defence and midfield and attack. He's a really crucial player, and it was a bit of a risky tactic from Inzaghi. I mean, clearly there's a lot of firepower in that midfield that he chose, so he did have the option. A goal behind, it becomes quite a risky tactic, I suppose, with the counter-attacking threat that Torino have. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like he's finding more questions than answers a little bit at the moment. He's changed the formation, but he's still incredibly loyal to certain players. He wants Parolo to play every game if he can. He wants Milinkovic to play every game. He's trying to get Correa into the team more. He wants Alberto back to his best, and yeah, it's difficult for him now to find a system, I suppose, in which he can get everybody into it. So there's been a bit of juggling going on.
Yeah, but I think having Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto is something Lazio playing together is something Lazio have to do because they are the most talented players in the team. Parolo probably has the experience to play in that position, and I think after all he played well yesterday. Obviously, Leva is another type of player that would guarantee more help to the defense, and this is another point I want to talk about because Lazio played really, really well, and I thought dominated the match. But Torino had just a couple of chances, but those chances was incredible. They hit the post twice, and they were pretty much the only chance Torino had. So it's concerning to see that every time the other team had a chance, it's very dangerous. Yeah, if you see the highlights, you think, well, Torino had the same chances of Lazio and was dangerous as well. But Lazio had much more ball possession and was more time in the penalty box of Torino, but Torino hit the post twice. So that's something that scares me going further.
Yeah, but I suppose that's a kind of continuation of what's been happening throughout the poor run, I suppose, that came to an end a week ago. The Lazio controlling the game but failing to really carve out brilliant chances quite often, and since then, the chances they've conceded, as you say quite rightly, being far too dangerous. And yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, because for me, that's all I've been able to find is the highlights of the game. And from watching those, you wonder how Torino haven't won the game, because like you say, they've hit the post twice. Di Silvestri has clearly still got some Lazio feelings, having missed an absolutely brilliant chance. And yeah, in contrast, Lazio required an absolutely superb individual piece of skill from Milinkovic, and there seemed to be a couple of other good, decent chances, but nothing like the same level, the same quality of chances as Torino managed to get. So that is a concern, but I think, in my mind, still, it's more important that if you are able to kind of control games and dominate games, that should come, especially with the creativity in this team and the finishing ability that we have with Immobile up front. I think that should hopefully come. And obviously in the last two games it has come, and like you say, I'm sure you probably mentioned this already, Vittorio, but as soon as you beat teams like Cagliari and Bologna, everyone says, well, it's just Cagliari and Bologna, but those could potentially be very difficult games because it's teams who are going to set up to defend and not let you through. And Bologna, yes, are pretty hopeless, but they have still got a draw against Milan very recently, and kept a clean sheet in that game. Cagliari, better home and away, but still can be a very tricky team as well. So I think it's been promising that we've managed to break down those teams and score a few goals.
Yeah, and Napoli won against Bologna yesterday, just in the last second of the match. So, this to prove that in Serie A, it's difficult to beat any type of teams. I said last time that probably Bologna was the worst team we played against, but still they proved to be able to stop AC Milan, who, it's not playing great football, but is still fighting with us for the Champions League spot. So it's never easy, especially, and this is the biggest problem Lazio is having, when you go one goal down, and this complicates a lot the project of Inzaghi in the match, and this is something Lazio have to try to avoid. Obviously, yesterday goal came from a very, very discussed penalty. I thought, after seeing it often, I think I saw it just 8 times yesterday, it was never a penalty. Or at least, if that was a penalty, then the one of Acerbi was penalty all the time. But Irrati didn't even went to check with the VAR. So that's really disappointing. And, seeing what happened yesterday with the Juventus Sampdoria, Alistair, I don't know if you saw it, and put this and add Lazio-Torino, I think the VAR is a completely disaster, and it's not useless. It's dangerous because it's changing matches, and some referee use it, some doesn't. Some use it against some teams, some I don't. So can we say that at the moment the VAR is a failure?
No, I don't think so. I don't think that what happened yesterday is the fault of VAR. It's, as you alluded to there, it's the fault of the way that it's being used. And that is still down, unfortunately, to the individual referees. And there is still a problem with the quality of officiating in this league, and that has struck Lazio again. So I don't think that VAR is what should be the I suppose the focus of people's anger here, because the VAR system should have been something that would have helped Lazio out in this situation. The problem is that we're still seeing incredible levels of inconsistency in terms of decision making, and I still stand by what I said when it was first introduced, which decisions should be put in the hands of the coaches or the club in some way, rather than the referees, in terms of when to make a challenge. Because yesterday there's no way that you can really look at those two different pushes or challenges in the box, the one on Acerbi and the one that committed by Marasic, and say that one is worth a penalty and the other isn't. But then you rely on the referee to be able to take that decision, and at the moment there's still a lot of kind of ego involved in the whole thing. I think some referees see it as a bit of a challenge to their authority, and they prefer to make decisions off their own back when they can still. So, yeah, in my opinion, it's not VAR that's the problem. It's still the referees and the way that it's being interpreted.
Can I talk about something that really is driving me nuts this morning. Gazzetta, as always, after the Serie A matches, published an article with all the discussed episode, and it's saying that the penalty of Belotti was a penalty, but the tackle on Acerbi was doubtful, not obvious, was doubtful. Same thing, Ansaldi pushing Immobile at the end. Again, doubts, not penalty. How can it be possible? I mean, for me, Belotti penalty wasn't a penalty, but if you gave that, then the Acerbi one is even more penalty than that one. And instead, Gazzetta dello Sport saying that Belotti is a penalty, and the one of Acerbi, no. I mean, this tells you how much people doesn't care about the importance of Lazio is really low in Italy, because that's a penalty. You know, even a UK people who doesn't care about Lazio notice that. So,
yeah, and I suppose the reaction to this is taking up very little space in the paper today compared to, for example, when Roma had issues with VAR earlier this season and were making complaints about it. It became a kind of big deal and a big talking point again. And yeah, I do understand that obviously there are other big issues going on in Italian football right now, which are quite rightly taking up more attention. But yeah, Lazio probably been worse hit by VAR in terms of the amount of points lost than most other clubs in this league. And yeah, I don't understand how you can look at that and say this is a penalty and the other one's doubtful. The other thing is that, I mean, again, you'll have to fill me in on this part, but the Marasic foul, the penalty, the way that how soft that is means that basically almost any corner kick would have been a penalty, because it's simple kind of jostling in the box. It's not a push as far as I can see. It's simply just contact in the box. But you find things about 10 times worse than that going on at every single corner kick. So, I don't know, I haven't seen any of the corner kicks from yesterday's match, but you're setting a precedent by giving that penalty that means that if you're considering that to be a foul, you have to consider that to be a foul for the rest of the game. And it should be a penalty, which means, as you rightly say, that there's absolutely no doubt about the Acerbi one, because perhaps you could have an argument about whether that's a penalty on any other day, but you can't have an argument about it on a day when the Marasic one has been considered to be a penalty.
So, to be honest, Marusic is silly because he keeps his hands on Belotti's back. So, that's a mistake of Marusic. But Belotti dives like Marusic is kicking his back, you know, and he dives embarrassing. And I said, okay, if this is penalty, then every match has 25 penalty, because we saw it on every corner kick. There's someone pushing or holding. So what do we do? 25 penalties a time. That's simply unbelievable. And again, you have the VAR. I don't understand why the guy at the VAR said, "Hey, come and look," because maybe it has been a soft decision, maybe a little bit too soft. I mean. Again, Marusic is silly because he keeps those hands there, but that's never a penalty. And okay, the other problem is, if for you that's a penalty, I don't agree, but okay, you have to carry that thing to all the other tackles, to all the other things. So the Marusic tackle that he had in the first 3 minutes of the match, then that's a penalty. What happened to Acerbi in the second half, then that's a penalty. What happened to Immobile at the end of a match, then that's a penalty. It's not acceptable that some are free kicks and some are not, and it's the same foul. So, really, it's not acceptable. And I think the VAR should help this referee, but if they're the one that should ask for help, then it's useless, because Irati thinks he's a genius, he doesn't have doubts, and so he will never ask for the VAR. Instead, as I said hundreds of times, each coach should have to challenge to ask for the VAR when he wants. And if he fails, if he's wrong, he loses one. If he is right, then he has the challenge back. But like this is useless. And the Juventus one, you know, the penalties of Juventus, I thought that was never a handball. So you have to use it wisely, and the most important thing is the measure has to be the same for both team and for the same episode. It cannot be for one it is and for the other isn't.
Yeah, I mean, playing the referee is an important ability as a team, and you need to be able to see how lenient or how strict the referee is, and dictate what you can get away with for the rest of the game. But the problem in a game like this is that they're not setting down any marker of what the level is, where the leniency ends. So it just becomes a completely erratic and unpredictable match after that, because the players don't know how hard to go in or what they can get away with. So it makes it a very difficult game, and you can understand why everyone's so frustrated about it. And yeah, the other thing I was wanting to ask you about, because again, it's something that's escaped the highlights reels that I've seen anyway, is that Simone Inzaghi was complaining that Armando Izzo should have been sent off for 2 yellow cards. So I haven't that incident, but it seems to be a big talking point.
Yeah, I think referee can dictate a match with what they are not whistling, and this is not only penalty. Most of all, are free kicks in your half or in the other half. And I thought in the first half he stopped Luis Alberto at least 6 times for nothing, where Lazio was going in a counter-attack with Luis Alberto with the ball. And he stopped Luis Alberto once, and then afterwards Izzo made the same thing. And Izzo made like 5 fouls in the first half, and at the last one he received a yellow card, and then he made another foul that was clearly another yellow card, and all Lazio players protested because he had to be sent off. And the referee waved on, didn't do nothing. So Lazio players were really upset. Probably what you didn't see was that at the end of the first half, all Lazio players went to the ref, and Inzaghi had to dash in the pitch and run to the referee, not to blame the referee, but to push Lazio players away. So I was thinking, okay, now Inzaghi is going to be sent off because he's dashing to the referee. Instead, he pushed the Lazio players that obviously were complaining away. But at the beginning of the second half, Inzaghi came in and went to talk to Irati, asking for explanation, and Irati again didn't say nothing. I mean, there are so many episodes yesterday that Irati dictate against Lazio that it's simply unacceptable, I think. And Alistair, Irati is the ref that was the VAR last year at Lazio-Torino, and you remember what happened at Lazio-Torino. That was probably the worst moment of VAR in the history.
Yeah, well, I think it was probably the angriest we've ever got on the show, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, not far off. But yeah, it's clearly it's a cursed fixture, and yeah, like Irati again involved in both games. So perhaps we just need to steer clear of this guy and hope that the referee distributor is kinder to us in the future.
Alistair, to stop talking about the ref for once, we have a couple of questions, and some of them are focused on Marusic. Alexander Mikkelsen is asking on Twitter, is our main concern right midfield? Basta is over. Patrick is not better than a reserve, and Marusic is simply not cutting it as reliable option. Again, we have even Stefan Scarpulla. Is the year and a half since he joined, would you rate Marusic a disappointment? I thought Marusic yesterday played well. Yes, he should have been more careful on the penalty, even though that we already said it wasn't a penalty. But I thought, especially the first 35 minutes when Lazio was pushing a lot, he played really well. He was finally able to dribble past his player and put the ball in the box. Of course, cross are not at the moment the best of Marusic. He maybe is better when he's trying to score from outside the box, but I think he improved. He played well yesterday, so I don't think he's the concern. The problem, as we said very often, Alistair, is that especially this year he has been often injured, we don't have really another valuable option there, because as Alexander was saying, Basta is over. I think they're going to sell him in January. And Patrick gives everything, but maybe it's not a Champions League level player.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to answer those two questions directly, the right midfield is definitely the area of concern in this team. It has been always throughout the season. It was really before we started the season, clearly the weakest part of the team. And we were, I suppose, relying on Maricic to have a better season than he's had. But no, I mean, to go on to the second question, I don't think that means in any way that we can rate Maricic as being a disappointment, because, if you take a step back from it, we brought this guy in. We had no idea who he was. We were still kind of asking what position he played in when he first arrived. And he was brought in on cheap. I think it was, about 4.5 million?
Something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. So, this wasn't a guy who we've spent a lot of money on, who is considered to be a Serie A star who's going straight into the team. This is a guy who was really being brought in more as a squad player, and a guy with useful versatility who managed to establish himself in the first team last year. But look, for the price we got him for, and for what he was supposed to be and what he's become, which is a first team regular, I think we can't really have too many complaints when he has a couple of bad games and has some bad form. I would have liked him to have played better this season than he has. And I still think, in my opinion, we should be doing absolutely everything possible to knock down Spal's door and try and take Lazio off them. But I can't see it happening. So, in my opinion, I think we need somebody, a really established player, to be the first choice there, with Maricic as a second choice, which I think was probably the way it was always supposed to be. I don't think it's fair to judge him as a disappointment, because, I think he's been very good value for money, but perhaps expectations have been raised too quickly on what he should be capable of.
I don't know. I thought we signed him for being a starter, so... I think he could have done better, but yesterday was probably his best match. We have some question from Facebook. Thumb. How can Bastos possibly be a worse option than Wallace? He's the Maradona of bad defenders. The score could change with every touch of the ball. Now, I have to say, Alistair, we had so many questions about Wallace yesterday, but I don't think Lazio didn't win because of Wallace. He came in the second half. Honestly, he didn't do nothing wrong. He missed a cross. He put it directly in Curva Nord. But blame Wallace for not winning yesterday. That's harsh. I mean, you can take all the other players and blame them for not winning. I don't think Wallace is the problem there. I think Alistair, since that terrible mistake he made at the derby, he's the player fans blame every time, even if it's not his fault.
Yeah, no, he's become a scapegoat. I mean, yeah, we've said this time and time again. I think he's suffering from the Mauricio effect, which is basically that once everyone's made their mind up, he's going to get absolutely hammered for any mistake he makes and be blamed for results. I was kind of surprised about all this because, going on social media, I was seeing all these criticisms coming in of Wallace, and I thought, oh God, what's he done now? But then, as far as I could see, other than giving the ball away cheaply at one point for a Torino attack, he doesn't seem to have been involved all that much in the game anyway. So unless there's something I'm missing, I can understand why there's so much anger directed at him, other than the fact that he tends to be the guy that gets most of the blame for these performances. And look, I'm not defending his quality as a player. I've said quite frequently that I just don't think he's capable of playing at this level in this position. I think he's a good defender and he could do a good job with a different team, but I don't think playing on the right side of Inzaghi's back three that he's ever going to stop making mistakes, or that he's ever going to, put in the performance he put in against Juventus every week. I don't think we can expect that from him. I think he's a decent player, but, he is what he is.
And I think that as a defender, he's decent. Of course, he had great performance against Cristiano Ronaldo on that. I think he's more dangerous when he has the ball on his feet. That's where I'm really concerned about him.
But that's what I mean about I don't think he's going to be a success in this team, because this team requires players who can bring the ball out of defence, who can pick passes and join the lines together. And if you have guys who don't have the composure or the ability to do that under pressure, then you're going to give the ball away in dangerous positions, which is more often than not what he's guilty of. And I don't think he's coachable with that. I don't think that's something he's improved on in 2 years. So that's my reason for thinking he's just not really got a future in this team. And thankfully, it does seem like Inzaghi has, finally come around to the idea of a guy like Luis Felipe, who does have the ability required to play in that system, and who does have the kind of technical skills to do that as well. He's still raw and he's not a perfect player, Luis Felipe, but I think that given the potential he's got and given the attributes he has, he's a much more promising player to work on. And so I think it's been encouraging to see him being picked as a first choice recently as well.
Yeah, again, he played really well yesterday. Again, another very good performance. And he just became dad a couple of hours before the beginning of the match. So it was, surprising to see him play. Often players don't play when they become father for the first time. But it was good to see him playing. I thought he wasn't distracted. He played really well. We have another question from Facebook from Pierre Nielsen saying, how can Lazio take action against the referee's decision? Alistair, do you want to answer?
Well, I think from everything that happened last season and the bad decisions that went against Lazio, I don't think there is much Lazio can really do other than complain about it and make loud noises about it, which has happened over and over again, and happened again, this time with Lotito, with Acerbi himself. But it's up to the refereeing federation themselves to really take a look at how they're doing these decisions, because they're not going to be really put under any particular pressure from the clubs to change the way or they're making these decisions. So I don't know. That's almost one of the most depressing things about it in my mind, is that there's not an awful lot Lazio can do to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Otherwise, it wouldn't have happened again.
Yeah, they can present a dossier with all the mistakes. Maybe in this case, point out that Irrati already made terrible decision against Lazio last year, so there's something wrong with him against Lazio, and maybe asked to not having any more this ref in matches against Lazio. I don't know if they will listen to that. It happened in the past. I think Inter and Juventus was able to not have a ref for a couple of matches after disappointment performance. But yeah, after reading what Gazzetta said today, I don't expect nothing. They are defending Irrati. It's simply embarrassing. So I don't think anything will change, unfortunately. Alistair, Benami Hadarashi, I hope I said it right, said, can we get Darmian in January?
I don't know. Yeah, this has been talked about a lot. I'd be surprised if I'm honest. I think it would be quite an expensive operation still, despite the fact he's not, playing an awful lot of games for United. There's been a regime change there, obviously, with Mourinho going out, and I wonder how that might change things with Darmian, and maybe he'll be more willing to stay and fight for his place. He did come out openly to the media quite recently to say that he does miss Italy. which has sparked all these stories about potential moves back to Serie A. But I suppose it comes back to the same doubts I have about Lazio ever happening. Is that I think the fee to bring him over wouldn't have to be massive, I don't think, but his wages would be. And whereas for Lazio, I don't think his wages would be astronomical, but the fee would be pretty big. So I'd be very surprised if Lotito is willing to bring out the checkbook to that extent in January. But then again, if he's not, then when is he? Because look, we're going into the winter break in 4th place, which is where he wants to end up. But I think from what we've seen so far this season, it's very, very clear that to maintain 4th place, we're going to need reinforcements. This team isn't playing at the same level it did last year, and there are quite obvious problems in it, and the right midfield is the most obvious of that. So I think if we want to actually kick on and do what we couldn't do last season, we're going to have to open his checkbook.
And as Inzaghi said yesterday in a press conference before the match, he said that there are some players that are going to be sold this January. So again, you can maybe offer Murcia to get Lazzari and decrease the price of the player. And as you were saying, this is the moment to do it. There are rumors that Muriel is going to sign for Milan. So the other teams, one way or another, are going to try to improve the team, and Lazio should do the same. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult.
Also worth mentioning as well that the teams we're up against for this Champions League spot are likely. I mean, it's a very close group of teams, but you would expect that it'd be Roma and Milan who are going to be the main rivals, and Milan are. You're talking about spending a bit of money on bringing in reinforcements in January. This is while they've got this, quite serious financial fair play restrictions on the go. And Lazio, as we mentioned in an earlier podcast this season, are the only team in the top 6 to have finished the year in the black with a profit. So Lazio can spend money, or should be able to spend money a bit easier than these other teams. And I think that, Lotito and Tari have established a reputation as being quite wily in the transfer market and never really wanting to spend money without a kind of some sort of guarantee of getting it back. So January is notoriously not very good for that. But I don't know, I think that there should be value out there for players who are coming towards the end of their contracts, who can be brought in for smaller fees from clubs looking to get rid of them. So yeah, the thing that frustrates me is that it seems like the time to do it, and Lazio are clearly in a position where they can do it. So we'll see. I'm not feeling too hopeful though.
No, that's the problem. And I don't know if Muriel will end to Milan. There are rumors even Fiorentina is linked to the player, but they're gonna get him on loan, so they're not gonna spend money on the player, just on his salary, obviously. So Lazio should be thinking of doing operation like that if they don't want to spend big this January. But the gap is not huge between Lazio and the other teams, and if Roma, Milan, Inter, and the other teams that are fighting for the 4th spot are gonna sign players, then I think Lazio have to do the same, because they have the chance to fight with these teams. And Inzaghi said that they need players, and we said it all the time. There isn't a Vice Immobile on the right midfield. There should be better options, and there aren't. So Lazio need reinforcement.
Yeah, and there's still the question. I mean, the question has been around for so long now that we're almost forgetting about it. But what happens if there's a serious injury to Ciro Immobile? I mean, it's ridiculous that 18 months later we still have that doubt hanging over us. Where suddenly, how much would things change if? I mean, I'm touching wood as I speak, but if something happened to Ciro and we're left with Caicedo and Rossi as our 2 options up front, I mean, that changes Lazio's season immediately. We saw how damaging that can be at the end of last season when in our crucial run-in we lost Chiro, and lo and behold we lost the Champions League spot. So I don't think, I think Caicedo has offered more value this season than he did last season, but I still think he's absolutely miles away from being a quality replacement as a number 9. So that's another concern for me still, and it worries me a bit that we're not even really being linked to players who would be a kind of Vice Immobile.
Yeah, and to be honest, Alistair, yesterday wasn't a great performance from Ciro Immobile. I thought with a better Ciro Immobile yesterday, Lazio would have won. But I think it's 4 matches in a row he doesn't score. I don't think he's fully fit. We saw yesterday, the 26th, he didn't start because he wasn't 100% fit. I think he's still not in his top form. But after the performance of Caicedo on Boxing Day, I think Inzaghi didn't have any option. And again, yesterday Caicedo came in the last minutes to try to win it, and he didn't do pretty much nothing at all. So really, Inzaghi hasn't got any option there, and this could be a problem in the long run. So I mean, Lazio, as we said, have the money to spend this winter, and it should be good to do it.
We'll see. It's worth saying as the end of January, football wasn't on, but there has been an extension. So yeah, that's one thing, is at least we do have a bit more time than we were originally supposed to get. Yes,
that's true. But we have to hope that Lotito and Tare use this extra time to start signing important players, because at the moment the only rumors we have about Lazio is Lazio signing a young Liverpool player, but it's gonna be this summer. So and he's a youngster, so I don't think he's one that's gonna come in directly and in the starting lineup of Simone Inzaghi. While I think at the moment that's what we need. Someone who can give an extra option to Simone Inzaghi in different positions. So again, we know that the winter transfer is usually very hard for Lazio, but we're gonna see. Simeone just replied to us saying Wallace is terrible. I'd rather see Mauricio in his place or play with 10 men. Well, Mauricio is not anymore with Lazio, so he cannot play instead of Wallace. And Alistair, yesterday, Perea left the club. I don't know. I really felt that they didn't give him a chance. I thought the first season of Perea, Lazio was playing so badly, and still he proved to have something. But then he went on loan, and he never was able to prove his talent. And I thought he had the quality, but didn't have the chance to show them.
Yeah, it's a bit of a strange one, I suppose. I mean, he's just one of these players who, I mean, he's one of many, many players really who've just kind of been left on the rubbish pile by Lazio, really. And you just wonder what he thinks about the whole thing, because he's spent how many years at Lazio now? I think he's been there for about 5 years, and like you say, he's had these loan moves that haven't really worked out, and he's never really convinced the club to give him a chance in the first team. And he arrived at the team as an exciting young prospect from Colombia, and now he leaves in his mid-20s without a club. And yeah, it's quite hard to see where he goes from here. So it's a bit of a shame, but my thoughts on it really are that if he did have the quality to make a difference for Lazio in the first team, he would have shown it at some point in the last 5 years. So I'm not too disappointed. I think it's good for the club to get someone off the books who's not going to be used. And I think it's also good for Perea, because it's just, for one reason or another, it's not happening for him with Lazio. So good luck to him elsewhere.
Yep. Do you think there are going to be other players like maybe Murgia, who's not playing that much this season? I mean, Inzaghi said that there are too many players at the moment, and so there could be someone leaving. I think Murcia could be one candidate, and probably he will have a lot of offer from Serie A clubs.
Yeah, well, he's been one of the players who's been most regularly linked, I suppose, with moves away from the club. And yeah, he's a young guy. He needs to be playing. It's a bit of a waste to have a promising young midfielder like him, who's shown that he has the quality to play at this level, and just not be using him whatsoever. But Inzaghi's kind of got his hands tied with that, and we'd all like to see him play, but at the same time, we'd all like to see the best Lazio out there. And unfortunately, he's not really close to being in the best Lazio team at the moment. So I think it could be a good idea for him to go out on loan and get some football. But we've expressed our kind of I suppose reservations about the loan system before, because it's a bit of a gamble. You can't guarantee that your player is going to be playing regularly or being used in the way that you'd like. So if he's going out on loan, I suppose I'd like to see him get the right fit, the right kind of player, the right kind of team for him. But I doubt there would be a lack of options for him if he is put on the market. He's been linked with a few teams lower down the league, Chievo, Bologna, and gonna hold on there. They could well get hold of him. So. Yeah, I think it might be good for Murcia to get some football elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, for me, there's still just so many players who, there's still Rafael Morrison, in the team. We've still got Dusan Basta, who's clearly finished by now. There's a number of players who just don't really have a future at the club, who also need to be taken care of, I suppose, and find clubs, because, like I said with Pereira, I think it's good for the club and for the player in a lot of these cases to get rid of them. And I suppose the other one I wouldn't be too surprised about to see going would be Martin Cáceres, actually, because Lazio have the option to extend his contract, which at the moment is supposed to run out in next summer. But Lazio have an option to extend by 1 year, but they don't look very interested in taking up the option at the moment, which means he would leave for free in the summer as it stands. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see Cáceres go, given the reports that have been going around. But yeah, I don't know, what do you think of that? Because he came in this time last year and we were quite excited about him because he's so experienced and so versatile. And it's been one of the kind of disappointments of the season, really, is that he's not really managed to establish himself in any position. You would have thought with the struggles we're having at right midfield that he might have been able to make an impression there, but he's not really made an impression anywhere.
No, I thought that could be an option for him, but every time he played, he didn't convince me. I thought, yeah, that could be his position, but maybe a couple of years ago. Now he doesn't have the pace to cover there. But honestly, I thought in the three-man defense, he could have been a perfect solution. He was playing there with Verona before coming to Lazio, and he was playing decent. And at Roma, he didn't have the same performance. I don't know why. We said that he's a bizarre type of player. We saw him playing really, really well, and then bad form, very a lot of issue off the pitch. We didn't know nothing here in Rome of off-field issue with Cáceres this time, but for sure he didn't perform as expected. So this is a big disappointment. And again, we were all really happy. I remember people saying that the best signing of last January was Cáceres to Lazio. Well, it didn't work out, unfortunately. And so again, Lazio needs someone, even because let's not forget that Radu's performance are not at the same level of last year, which makes sense. He's not getting younger, so you cannot expect his level to continue that high. So probably Lazio need a reinforcement there in the couple, maybe next summer at least.
Yeah. With Radu, I suppose it's been interesting that Acerbi's been tried out a few times now on the left-hand side of defence with Felipe playing in the middle, which I suppose gives Inzaghi another option. I think he's been quite smart to use the opportunities he's had in the Europa League and so on to try Acerbi out there. And yeah, I've actually really liked Acerbi in that position when he's played there. He's done well in kind of both phases. He's quite a dangerous player when he moves forward, and is obviously, as we know, a very smart defensive player and knows how to organise and position himself right. So yeah, that is one option there, I suppose. But clear that it's still a problem. It's still a weakness in the side, and I think that Inzaghi's done really what he can at this stage with the players he's got. So perhaps he does need to bring in a few more reinforcements.
Yeah, let's hope that Tare saw it as well and is going to do something for Inzaghi and help this team, because especially if Milan going out and sign some players, then the competition is going to be harder for Lazio. And, it would be a shame again to miss the Champions League spot, seeing how Roma and Milan are performing at the moment. Alice? Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say I suppose we should be positive about the fact that we've ended the year in the top four. But you have to say it's been a bit of a missed opportunity, given that the run of games we've had in December, we knew how important this was going to be, and I don't think it's really been the success we needed. And if we picked up some of in a really good position by now, so that is a little bit of a disappointment, if I'm honest. But at the same time, going into the new year in the top four, it's obviously still a very nice position to be in.
Yes, unfortunately, we have to remember that there is Napoli and Juventus coming the next two Serie A matches. So
easy. Yeah,
very easy matches. But this is discussion for another time, Alistair. We can wrap it up here. And as usual, if you like the podcast, please rate, review. You can subscribe on our podcast on iTunes, on Spreaker. And if you want to support us, there's our Patreon page, patreon.com/Lazio Lounge. And we're going to talk next year, Alistair. I'll give you 1 year of break. Happy?
Delighted. Yeah, Happy New Year to all our listeners. When it comes, thanks for your support over the last, 2018, I suppose. And more to come in 2019.
Yep. Happy New Year even to Wallace.
Even to Wallace.
Bye, everybody, and Happy New Year even from me. Bye.